The BMW's red bow gleamed under my son's Christmas lights like a taunt. I watched from the kitchen window as Marcus handed Linda the keys to her brand new $60,000 gift, his face beaming with pride. "Merry Christmas, Mom Linda," he called out, using that ridiculous nickname that made my teeth clench. My daughter-in-law Ashley squealed and clapped like they'd just cured cancer instead of buying a luxury car for a woman who'd been in our family exactly 8 months. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Me? Well, let me show you what my loving son got his actual mother. I held up the pink plastic piggy bank, shaking it so the 3 lonely dollar bills inside rustled like dead leaves. $3. After 35 years of raising him, after every sacrifice I'd made, every penny I'd spent on his college education, his wedding, his down payment. $3. "It's symbolic, Mom," Marcus had explained with that patronizing tone he'd perfected since marrying Ashley. "You're always saving money, so we thought this would be perfect." Perfect. That's exactly what I'd called it when I smiled sweetly and thanked him for such a thoughtful gift. Because that's what mothers do, isn't it? We smile and pretend our hearts aren't breaking while our children hand us scraps and call it love. I watched Ashley link arms with Linda, both of them admiring the leather interior like schoolgirls. Linda had swooped into our family after my dear husband Tom passed 2 years ago, appearing at every family gathering with her perfectly styled silver hair and designer clothes. Somehow she'd managed to become Mom Linda, while I, the woman who actually birthed Marcus, had been demoted to just Mom, and apparently only worth $3. The December wind rattled my kitchen window as I set the piggy bank on the counter next to the Christmas cards I'd never sent. Cards that would have cost more than my entire gift. The irony wasn't lost on me, though I doubt Marcus would appreciate it even if I explained it to him. I'd spent the morning cooking their Christmas dinner, of course, standing in my kitchen for 6 hours preparing honey-glazed ham, homemade rolls, green bean casserole from scratch, and that ridiculous trifle Ashley insisted on, even though no one but her actually liked it. My feet ached, my back screamed, and my hands were raw from washing dishes. But hey, at least I got $3 out of the deal. The front door opened and I heard Ashley's voice carrying through the house. "Dot, we're heading out to show Mom Linda her new car around town. Not, would you like to come, or want to join us?" Just an announcement that they were leaving, taking their precious Mom Linda on a victory lap while the woman who'd provided their Christmas feast stood alone in her kitchen holding a children's toy. I heard Marcus call out, "Thanks for dinner, Mom. We'll see you next week." Next week, when they needed something, no doubt. My jaw tightened as I listened to their car doors slam, one after another, followed by the distinctive purr of a $60,000 engine pulling out of my driveway. The house fell silent, except for the hum of the dishwasher and the ticking of the grandfather clock Tom had loved. I looked around my empty kitchen, at the mountain of dishes I'd volunteered to clean up, at the leftover food that would feed me for a week because God knows they wouldn't take any home. That's when I noticed Linda's purse sitting on my counter, forgotten in her excitement over her shiny new toy. A black leather Kate Spade bag that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. She'd left it right next to my $3 piggy bank, and somehow that felt like the universe delivering a message. I picked up the purse, feeling its expensive weight in my hands. Inside I could see her wallet, thick with credit cards and cash, her phone in a rhinestone case, and a prescription bottle. How careless of her to leave behind something so important. How very careless indeed. A slow smile spread across my face as I carried Linda's purse to my bedroom, where I could examine its contents properly. After all, I was just being helpful, making sure nothing was missing before I returned it. That's what good mothers do. Linda's wallet was a treasure trove of information, and I do mean treasure. As I carefully inventoried the contents on my bedroom dresser, I couldn't help but marvel at how much someone could learn about a person from their purse. Cash, nearly $400. Credit cards from every major bank, plus store cards for Nordstrom, Saks, and Tiffany. But it was the folded papers tucked behind her driver's license that made my eyebrows shoot up. Bank statements. 3 of them, printed just last week. Our dear Linda wasn't just well off, she was loaded. The kind of loaded that makes a $60,000 BMW look like pocket change. Her checking account balance alone had more zeros than I'd seen since Tom's life insurance payout. And here, I'd thought she was just another widow trying to find companionship in her golden years. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Her phone buzzed constantly with text messages, and I couldn't help but notice the notifications lighting up the screen. Deposit confirmed, $15,000 from something called Sunset Investments. Meeting confirmed for Thursday. Bring the Williams file. Williams. That would be us. I sat in Tom's old recliner, the one Marcus had tried to convince me to throw away because it didn't match Ashley's decorating vision. Funny how everything that mattered to me didn't match their vision. The prescription bottle caught my attention next. Anxiety medication prescribed just 2 months ago, right around the time she'd started getting more involved in our family finances. You see, Linda had been so helpful lately, offering to drive me to doctor appointments, volunteering to review my insurance policies, asking detailed questions about Tom's pension. Just want to make sure you're taken care of, honey, she'd say with that sweet smile. But now I was wondering exactly who was being taken care of. The house phone rang, jarring me from my investigation. Mrs. Williams? This is Officer Patterson with the state police. I'm calling about a report we received regarding a missing person. A Linda Chen? My heart skipped, but my voice stayed steady. Linda Chen? I'm sorry, officer, but I'm not familiar with that name. Our records show she was last seen at your address earlier today. Her son filed the report when she didn't return home and wasn't answering her phone. Her son. Interesting that she'd never mentioned having children. In all her stories about being a lonely widow, somehow she'd forgotten to mention family members who might file missing person reports. Well, we did have Christmas dinner today, I said carefully. But I believe she left with my son and daughter-in-law. They were going for a drive in her new car. New car? A BMW. Christmas gift from my son. I let that sink in. Perhaps you should contact them. Marcus Williams and Ashley Williams. After I hung up, I looked at Linda's phone again. 23 missed calls from someone named Brian Chen, and text messages getting increasingly frantic. Mom, where are you? The police are looking for you. Please call me back. So Linda had a son who cared enough to call the police when she went missing. Unlike my son, who'd probably wait a week before wondering where I was. The irony was delicious, really. Here I was holding the belongings of a woman whose child actually worried about her well-being. I opened her photo gallery, telling myself I was still just being thorough. Most recent photos showed Linda at various family gatherings. Our family gatherings. Linda at Marcus and Ashley's anniversary dinner. Linda at their Labor Day barbecue. Linda at Ashley's birthday party. In every single photo, she was positioned between Marcus and Ashley, like she belonged there more than I did. But it was the older photos that made my blood run cold. Pictures of documents, screenshots of bank statements, photos of the inside of my house, my bedroom, my home office, areas where a guest had no business being. The timestamps showed she'd been documenting things for months, long before her relationship with our family had become so cozy. My hands were shaking now as I scrolled further back. There it was, a photo of Tom's death certificate, another of our marriage license, screenshots of property records showing the value of our house, and a photo that made my stomach drop, my social security card, which I kept in my jewelry box upstairs. Linda Chen wasn't just a lonely widow looking for family. She was conducting surveillance. The question was why, and more importantly, what was she planning to do with all this information? The grandfather clock chimed 7 times, and I realized they'd been gone for over 2 hours. A tour of the neighborhood shouldn't take that long, even with stops to show off a new car. My phone sat silent on the nightstand, no calls or texts from Marcus letting me know where they were or when they might return Linda's purse. I carefully repacked everything exactly as I'd found it, but not before taking photos of her bank statements and the more interesting documents with my own phone. If Linda was playing games, then she'd just taught me the rules. The BMW's engine announced their return, and I heard Ashley's laughter floating through the winter air. I positioned myself in the kitchen, Linda's purse in hand, ready to play the concerned mother who'd discovered their oversight. But as I watched Linda through the window, studying her face as she walked toward my door, I noticed something I'd missed before. The way she moved, the way she surveyed my property, the calculating look in her eyes as she approached. This wasn't a woman who'd carelessly forgotten her purse. This was a woman who'd left it behind on purpose. "Oh my goodness, Dot. Thank you so much for keeping my purse safe," Linda gushed as I handed it over, her performance Oscar-worthy. "I can't believe I forgot it. I must be getting old." She laughed that tinkling laugh that had charmed Marcus from day one, but now it sounded like nails on a chalkboard. "No problem at all," I replied, watching her carefully check the contents. Her fingers moved quickly through the wallet, and I caught the almost imperceptible relief that flashed across her face when she confirmed everything was still there. "I hope you enjoyed showing off your beautiful gift." "Oh, we did. Marcus is such a thoughtful boy. You raised him well." The way she emphasized boy when talking about my 35-year-old son made my skin crawl. "Ashley and I stopped by my house so I could show the car to my neighbors. They're all so jealous. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Marcus appeared behind her, already reaching for his coat. Well, Mom, we should get going. Work tomorrow, you know how it is. 3 hours ago, he'd been beaming about his generous gift to Linda. Now he was treating our family Christmas like an obligation to check off his list. Actually, Marcus, before you go, I said, my voice sweet as pie, I got a call from the state police. Something about Linda being reported missing? The color drained from Linda's face. Missing? But that's ridiculous. I'm obviously not missing. That's what I told Officer Patterson. Apparently your son filed a report? I watched Linda's composure crack for just a moment. He must be worried sick about you. My son? Linda's voice pitched higher. Oh, well, yes. Brian can be overprotective, ever since his father died. She waved her hand dismissively. I should call him and explain. You have a son? Ashley looked genuinely surprised. Linda, you never mentioned having children. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Linda's eyes darted between all of us, clearly calculating her next move. Well, we're not very close. He lives in Seattle. Different lives, you know how it is. But I knew better now. Those text messages had been desperate, loving, concerned. That wasn't the communication pattern of a distant relationship. Linda had been lying to us about being alone in the world, just like she'd been lying about so many other things. How wonderful that you have family, I said, still smiling. And they care enough to worry when you don't come home. That's precious. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Mom, we really need to get going. Early morning tomorrow. Of course, sweetheart. Drive safely. Linda, I do hope your son stops worrying once you call him back. I watched through the window as they walked to their cars. Linda moved quickly, already dialing her phone before she reached the BMW. Marcus and Ashley followed more slowly, and I could see them talking, probably about Linda's mysterious family revelation. As soon as their taillights disappeared, I went to my computer. Brian Chen, Seattle. It took me exactly 15 minutes to find him on social media, and what I discovered made everything click into place. Brian Chen wasn't just Linda's son. He was a successful attorney specializing in elder law and estate planning. His Facebook page was full of photos with his mother, recent photos showing a close, loving relationship, photos at family dinners, birthday celebrations, holidays. This wasn't a distant, estranged son. This was a devoted child who spoke to his mother regularly and spent holidays with her. So why was Linda pretending to be alone? Why was she inserting herself into our family when she clearly had one of her own? I kept digging. Linda's social media presence was minimal, but Brian's was open, and Mother's appeared frequently in his posts. Mom's visiting again next month, from October. Family dinner with Mom and the kids, from September. Mom's advice about the Peterson case saved the day. From August, the Peterson case. I Googled it on impulse and found myself reading about a complex elder fraud investigation that Brian Chen had worked on. An elderly woman had been systematically defrauded by people she trusted, people who had gained access to her finances through emotional manipulation. My hands went cold. I printed the article, along with several others about Brian's work. Elder fraud prevention, financial abuse awareness, protecting seniors from family members and friends who exploit their trust. Either this was the most incredible coincidence in history, or Linda Chen was running a very sophisticated long-term con, and my son had just bought her a $60,000 car with money I was starting to suspect he didn't actually have. I called Marcus's cell phone. It went straight to voicemail, so I tried the house. Ashley answered, her voice tight with irritation. Hi, Dot. Marcus is in the shower. That's fine, dear. I just wanted to ask him something about his finances. You know, with the expensive gift and all, I'm curious how you two are managing such generosity. The pause was too long. What do you mean? Well, a BMW isn't exactly pocket change. I'm just impressed that you've both done so well for yourselves. I kept my voice light. Curious, grandmotherly. We're doing fine, Dot. Marcus got a promotion at work. How wonderful. When did that happen? He hadn't mentioned it. Another pause. Recently. Look, I should let you go. Marcus needs help with something. She hung up before I could ask another question, but she told me everything I needed to know. People who are legitimately doing well financially don't get defensive when asked about their success. They brag about it. I sat in Tom's chair, looking at my $3 piggy bank and thinking about $60,000 worth of car sitting in Linda's driveway. Then I thought about those bank statements in her purse, and her son, the elder fraud attorney, and the surveillance photos she'd taken of my personal documents. Something was very wrong with this picture, and I was starting to suspect that I wasn't the only victim in Linda Chen's game. The question was, whether Marcus and Ashley were players or pawns. Either way, tomorrow I was going to start finding out exactly what Linda Chen was really after. And if my instincts were right, Christmas was about to become very interesting indeed. I didn't sleep much that night. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with a pot of coffee and every piece of information I could find about Linda Chen. Brian Chen, and something that was becoming clear, wasn't adding up. By sunrise, I had a plan that would have made Tom proud. My first call was to Brian Chen's law office in Seattle. I used my sweetest grandmother voice when his secretary answered. "Hello, dear. This is Dorothy Williams from Virginia. I'm calling about Brian's mother, Linda. There was a little incident yesterday, and I want to make sure she's all right. Oh, you must be the family friend she's been visiting. Mr. Chen was so worried yesterday when his mother didn't answer her phone. Is she okay? If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from." Family friend. Interesting choice of words. Yes, she's fine now. But I'm curious. How long has Linda been staying in Virginia? Brian must miss her terribly. Oh, it's been several months now. Since September, I think. He calls her every day. Such a devoted son. He was planning to visit for Christmas. But Linda insisted she wanted to spend the holidays with her new friends there. September. Linda had been in Virginia since September, which meant she'd been planning whatever this was for 4 months. And she'd deliberately kept her son away for Christmas so he wouldn't interfere with her operation. Well, she's certainly become part of our family here. My son even bought her a car yesterday. The silence on the other end was deafening. I'm sorry, did you say your son bought her a car? A beautiful BMW, $60,000. He's so generous. Mrs. Williams, I think there might be some confusion. Linda has her own car and her own money. She wouldn't need anyone to buy her anything. She's quite well off financially. I let that sit for a moment. Oh my. Well, perhaps I misunderstood. You know how it is with us older folks. After I hung up, I poured another cup of coffee and stared out at my winter garden. Linda Chen was wealthy, had a devoted son, and owned her own car. So why was she letting my son spend $60,000 on another one? And why was she pretending to be alone? My phone rang, and Marcus's name appeared on the screen. Finally. Mom, we need to talk. Good morning to you too. Sweetheart, how did you sleep? Mom, seriously, Ashley and I are coming over. We'll be there in an hour. The tone was all wrong. This wasn't a social visit. This was an intervention, which meant Linda had already gotten to them. I spent the next hour preparing for battle. They arrived looking like they'd dressed for a funeral. Marcus wore his serious business suit, and Ashley had on her handling difficult clients outfit. They sat across from me at my kitchen table, like a tribunal. Mom, Marcus began, his voice carefully controlled. Linda is very upset. She feels like you violated her privacy yesterday. I raised an eyebrow. Raised? By keeping her purse safe? I'm afraid I don't understand. She thinks you went through her things. Well, of course I did. What if something had fallen out? What if she'd had medication that needed to be refrigerated? I was being responsible. Ashley leaned forward. Linda feels uncomfortable about some of the questions you asked last night. About her son. About her finances. I was making conversation. I thought it was wonderful that she has family who care about her. Marcus's jaw tightened. The thing is, Mom, Linda's been through a lot. Her relationship with her son is complicated, and she doesn't like to talk about it. Complicated. That wasn't how Brian's secretary had described their daily phone calls and family dinners. I see. And the police call? Was that complicated too? They exchanged looks. Ashley spoke carefully. Linda explained that her son has some control issues. He gets anxious when he doesn't know where she is. It's actually part of why she needed to get away from Seattle. Control issues. I almost laughed at the audacity. They were rewriting the narrative in real time, turning a concerned son into a controlling monster to explain away yesterday's inconvenient phone call. How awful for her, I said sympathetically. It must be so hard to have family who care too much. Marcus missed the sarcasm entirely. Exactly. That's why what you did was so hurtful. She trusted us with her privacy, and then you started interrogating her about her personal life. Marcus, I asked where her son lived. That's hardly an interrogation. Mom, the point is, Linda is family now. She's been like a mother to us, especially after Dad died. She's been there for us in ways that... He stopped himself, but the damage was done. In ways that what, Marcus? In ways that I haven't been. Ashley jumped in quickly. That's not what he meant. No, I think it's exactly what he meant. Linda has been like a mother to you. The kind of mother who deserves a $60,000 BMW, unlike your actual mother who deserves $3 in a piggy bank. The silence was arctic. Marcus's face flushed red. That gift was symbolic, Mom. You know that? Yes, you've explained the symbolism. I'm a penny-pinching old woman who should be grateful for scraps. I stood up and walked to the window. Tell me something, Marcus. How exactly did you afford Linda's car? What do you mean? I mean, $60,000 is a lot of money, even for someone with your new promotion. Another exchanged look. Ashley's tell was that she touched her wedding ring when she was lying. She was touching it now. We saved up, Marcus said. For how long? Mom, I don't think our finances are any of your business. You're absolutely right. Your finances are none of my business, just like Linda's purse contents are none of hers. I turned back to face them. But I'm curious about something else. This promotion you got, Marcus, when did that happen exactly? He shifted uncomfortably. A few months ago. What's your new title? Regional Sales Manager. At the same company? Yes. I nodded thoughtfully. That's interesting, because I ran into your old boss, Jim Henderson, at the grocery store last week. He mentioned they'd had to let several people go recently. Budget cuts. He was worried about you. Marcus went very still. Ashley's hand was practically welded to her wedding ring. Jim doesn't know about internal promotions, Marcus said finally. No, I suppose he wouldn't, especially if they didn't actually happen. The kitchen fell silent except for the tick of the grandfather clock. Finally, Ashley spoke up. Dot, I think we should go. This conversation isn't productive. You're probably right. I walked them to the door. Give Linda my regards. Tell her I hope she feels better about everything. As I watched them drive away, I realized the game was more complicated than I'd thought. Linda wasn't just running a con on me. She was running one on Marcus and Ashley, too. The question was whether they were willing participants or just as much victims as I was supposed to be. Either way, it was time to level the playing field. I spent the rest of the day playing detective, and what I discovered made my blood boil. Marcus hadn't gotten a promotion. In fact, according to his company's public records, he'd been written up twice in the last 6 months for poor performance. The $60,000 BMW hadn't come from his success. It had come from somewhere else entirely. A quick check of public records showed that Marcus and Ashley had taken out a second mortgage on their house 3 months ago. $70,000, approved in October. Right around the time Linda would have been gathering all that financial intelligence from her little surveillance operation in my house. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. The pieces were falling into place, and the picture they formed made me sick to my stomach. Linda had spent months collecting information about my finances, my property values, my late husband's pension. Then somehow, she'd convinced my son to go into debt to buy her an expensive gift, probably with promises about how it would all work out in the end. I had a feeling I knew what those promises involved. My laptop screen showed the results of another search I'd been dreading. Dorothy Williams' property records. Sure enough, there it was. My house had been appraised 3 months ago, an appraisal I'd never authorized, never been present for, and never seen the results of. The estimated value made my heart skip a beat. $450,000. Tom and I had bought this house for $60,000 30 years ago. We'd had no idea it had appreciated so dramatically, but apparently Linda Chen had known exactly what it was worth. I called the appraisal company, using my most confused elderly lady voice. Hello, this is Dorothy Williams on Elm Street. I'm calling about the appraisal that was done on my property in October. I seem to have misplaced the paperwork. Of course, Mrs. Williams. Let me pull that up. Yes, here it is. October 15th. The appraisal was ordered by Marcus Williams for estate planning purposes. Estate planning. My estate being planned while I was still very much alive. And he was authorized to order this. How exactly? Well, he's listed as your power of attorney on the request form. He provided all the necessary documentation. Power of attorney. I thanked the woman and hung up, my hands shaking with rage. I had never, ever granted Marcus power of attorney over anything. But apparently someone had created paperwork claiming otherwise. I drove to my lawyer's office without calling ahead. Margaret Patterson had handled Tom's will and our estate planning for 20 years. If anyone had filed power of attorney documents, she would have copies. Dorothy, Margaret looked surprised to see me. I wasn't expecting you today. How are you holding up? I need to see my files, Margaret. All of them. Especially anything involving power of attorney. Her face grew serious. Dorothy, is everything all right? I explained about the appraisal, about Marcus's supposed authorization, about Linda Chen and her surveillance photos, and her mysterious financial advice. Margaret listened with growing alarm. Dorothy, I've never prepared any power of attorney documents for you. You were very clear after Tom died that you wanted to maintain complete control of your affairs. Then how did Marcus get authorization to order an appraisal of my house? Margaret was already turning to her computer. Let me check something. Her fingers flew over the keyboard, then stopped. Her face went white. What is it? Someone filed a power of attorney document with the county clerk 3 weeks ago. It's notarized and appears to grant Marcus Williams complete authority over your financial and property matters. The room spun a little. That's impossible. I never signed anything like that. Dorothy, I need you to look at something. She turned her monitor toward me. There on the screen was a legal document bearing my name and signature. It looked official, complete with a notary seal and witness signatures. It was also a complete forgery. The signature looks like yours, Margaret said carefully. I studied it closely. It's close, but look at the Y in Dorothy. I always loop it twice. This only has one loop, and I never dot my I's with circles. I use plain dots. I pointed to several inconsistencies in the handwriting. This is a very good forgery, but it's not my signature. Margaret's expression was grim. Dorothy, if someone forged legal documents to gain control of your assets, this is fraud. Serious fraud. We need to call the police. Not yet, I said quickly. I need to understand the full scope of what they're planning first. If I report this now, they'll just destroy evidence and claim it was all a misunderstanding. Dorothy, this is dangerous. If they have fake power of attorney documents, they could sell your house, drain your accounts, anything. I thought about Linda's bank statements, about her son the elder fraud attorney, about the BMW that Marcus couldn't actually afford. I think they're planning exactly that, but I want to catch them in the act. Margaret looked horrified. I can't advise you to wait on this. You're not advising me. I'm telling you what I'm going to do. I stood up, feeling more determined than I had in years. But I need you to do something for me. I want to change my will. Change it how? I smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. I want to leave everything to charity, effective immediately. Make it ironclad, Margaret. No loopholes, no contests, no way for Marcus or anyone else to inherit so much as a penny. Dorothy, are you sure? You're angry right now, and decisions made in anger. I'm not angry, Margaret. I'm clear-headed for the first time in months. I thought about my $3 piggy bank and $60,000 worth of BMW. I'm done being taken advantage of by people who think love comes with a price tag. As I drove home, I felt lighter than I had since Tom died. For the first time in this whole mess, I was 3 steps ahead instead of 3 steps behind. Linda Chen and my son thought they were playing chess with a helpless old woman. They were about to learn that this old woman had been watching, learning, and planning. And unlike them, I actually knew the rules of the game. Tomorrow, the real fun would begin. The next morning brought the kind of crisp January air that makes everything seem possible. I was humming while I made coffee, planning my day, when the phone rang. Linda Chen's voice was honey-sweet and full of concern. Dorothy, darling, I hope you're feeling better after our little misunderstanding yesterday. Oh, Linda, I'm feeling wonderful. Thank you for asking. That's so good to hear. Listen, I was hoping we could talk. Just the two of us, woman to woman. Marcus and Ashley are so worried about you. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. I almost laughed. Of course they were worried. They'd probably spent all night wondering how much I actually knew about their little scheme. I'd be happy to talk, Linda. Why don't you come over for coffee this afternoon? Actually, I was thinking we could meet somewhere neutral. That lovely little cafe downtown? Say 2 o'clock? Neutral territory. She was being careful now, making sure our conversation couldn't be recorded or interrupted. That sounds perfect. I'll see you then. I spent the morning preparing for what I suspected would be Linda's first serious attempt at manipulation. I dressed carefully. My best sweater, Tom's wedding ring prominently displayed, just a touch of lipstick. I wanted to look like a harmless widow, someone who might be easily convinced to make poor decisions. The cafe was nearly empty on a Tuesday afternoon. Linda had chosen a corner table where we could talk privately, and she'd arrived early to secure the position. I noted the way she'd positioned herself with her back to the wall, where she could see everyone coming and going. This wasn't a grieving widow having coffee with a friend. This was a predator preparing to strike. Dorothy, you look lovely today, Linda said, standing to hug me. I'm so glad we could do this. Me too, dear. It's nice to have some girl time. We ordered coffee and small talk for a few minutes about the weather, her new car, how thoughtful Marcus was. Then Linda leaned forward with that concerned expression she'd perfected. Dorothy, I want you to know that Marcus and Ashley are very worried about you. They think you might be feeling left out, maybe a little jealous of our relationship. I widened my eyes innocently. Jealous? Oh my goodness, why would they think that? Well, the questions yesterday about my son, about my finances, it felt a little intrusive, Like maybe you were trying to find reasons not to trust me. Linda, I hope you don't think I was prying. I was just making conversation. She reached across the table and patted my hand. Of course, sweetie. I know you meant well. But here's the thing, and I hope you won't be offended, but Marcus has shared some concerns about your financial situation. Here we go. I made myself look confused. My financial situation? He's worried that you're not being strategic about your assets. You know, planning for the future, making sure your money works as hard as possible for you. I think I'm doing fine, dear. Tom left me well provided for. Linda's smile became more intense. But Dorothy, are you really maximizing your potential? That beautiful house of yours, for instance. It's worth so much money just sitting there. You could be leveraging that equity, making investments that would secure your future. Investments? Well, yes. Marcus mentioned that you've been talking about maybe downsizing, finding something more manageable. And I happen to know some people who specialize in helping seniors transition their assets in tax-advantaged ways. I blinked slowly, as if processing this information. Tax-advantaged ways? It's complicated, but basically, there are legal strategies that can protect your wealth from estate taxes while giving you access to much more liquid capital. You could sell the house to an investment group I work with, then lease it back at a very reasonable rate. You'd have hundreds of thousands of dollars to invest, plus you could stay right where you are. The audacity was breathtaking. She was proposing that I sell my house to her associates, then rent it back from them, essentially paying them to live in my own home while they controlled the asset. That sounds complicated, I said carefully. It is, which is why you need experts to handle it. People you trust. She squeezed my hand. Dorothy, I've become very fond of you. You're like the mother I never had. I want to help you make the smartest decisions possible. The mother she never had. While her actual son called her every day and worried when she didn't come home. And Marcus agrees with this plan? Oh, Marcus is very excited about it. He could help manage your investments, make sure you're getting the best returns. It would be a wonderful way for you two to work together on securing your future. There it was, the full scope of the con. Sell my house to Linda's associates. Give Marcus control of the proceeds, and somehow trust that they'd all act in my best interests while I paid rent to live in my own home. It sounds like you've put a lot of thought into this, Linda. I have, because I care about you, Dorothy. We all do. She leaned back, confident now that she had me considering the bait. Of course, timing is important with these kinds of strategies. The investment group I'm thinking of only takes on new clients at certain times of the year. When would that be? Well, we'd need to move fairly quickly, within the next few weeks probably. Of course. Create urgency. Pressure me to make a decision before I had time to think it through or consult with anyone who might talk sense into me. I nodded thoughtfully. This is a lot to consider, Linda. I'd need to think about it carefully. Of course, sweetie. But don't think too long. Opportunities like this don't come around often. As we said goodbye in the parking lot, Linda hugged me warmly. I'm so glad we had this talk, Dorothy. I feel like we understand each other so much better now. I hugged her back, smiling sweetly. Oh, Linda, I think you're absolutely right. I understand perfectly now. Driving home, I couldn't stop grinning. Linda had just confessed to a plan that amounted to elder fraud, real estate scam, and conspiracy to commit theft. She'd handed me everything I needed to destroy her, Marcus and Ashley in one tidy conversation. But I wasn't ready to spring that trap yet. First, I wanted to see how far they were willing to go. Because something told me Linda's little investment group proposal was just the beginning of what they had planned for my assets. And I was very curious to find out exactly how desperate they'd become to get their hands on my money. Christmas Revenge Story, Chapter 7:11. I didn't have to wait long to see how desperate they'd become. 3 days after my enlightening coffee date with Linda, Marcus showed up at my door with a folder full of official-looking documents and the kind of smile that used to work when he was 8 years old and had broken something expensive. Mom, I brought those investment papers Linda mentioned. I thought we could go through them together. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. I ushered him into the living room, noting how his eyes immediately went to the family photos on the mantelpiece. Photos of him graduating college, getting married, holding his children for the first time, all funded by parents who'd sacrificed to give him the best life possible. The irony clearly wasn't lost on him because his jaw tightened before he looked away. These are quite comprehensive, I said, flipping through page after page of legal gibberish designed to confuse and intimidate. Reverse mortgage applications, investment portfolio transfers, property liquidation agreements. My goodness, Marcus, you've been busy. Linda's friends are very thorough. They want to make sure everything is done properly. Legally. I raised an eyebrow at that last word. Legally. Yes, that's important, isn't it? I set the papers aside and looked directly at my son. Marcus, I need to ask you something and I want you to tell me the truth. Are you in some kind of financial trouble? His rehearsed composure cracked slightly. What makes you ask that? Well, let's see. You buy a $60,000 car you can't afford for a woman you've known 8 months. You take out a second mortgage on your house. You claim to have gotten a promotion that your company has no record of. And now you're pressuring me to liquidate my assets for mysterious investment opportunities. I smiled sweetly. Call it mother's intuition. Marcus ran his hands through his hair, suddenly looking older than his 35 years. Mom, it's complicated. I'm sure it is. Help me understand. For a moment, I thought he might actually tell me the truth. His shoulders sagged and he stared at his hands like a little boy caught stealing cookies. Then his phone buzzed, and I saw Linda's name on the screen. Whatever spell of honesty had been building broke immediately. Look, Mom, the bottom line is this. You're sitting on a gold mine here. This house, Dad's pension, your savings. But it's not working for you. It's just sitting there while inflation eats away at its value. And Linda's investment group can fix that? They specialize in helping seniors maximize their assets. You could be making 10 times what you're earning now in interest alone. I nodded thoughtfully. 10 times. That's quite a return. What's their track record with other clients? Marcus's eyes shifted away from mine. They're very exclusive. They don't advertise their client list for privacy reasons. Of course not. And you've met these mysterious investors personally? Linda handles all the client relations. She has experience with these kinds of high-level financial strategies. Does she now? What kind of experience exactly? Mom, why are you being so suspicious? Linda is trying to help us. Help you! Marcus. I leaned forward, my voice gentle but firm. Do you remember when you were 12 and you wanted that expensive bicycle for Christmas? The one that cost more than we could afford? He looked confused by the change in subject. Yeah, I remember. Do you remember what your father and I did? You worked extra shifts. Dad picked up weekend construction jobs. You both sacrificed to get me that bike. That's right. We sacrificed for you because that's what parents do. We put your happiness above our comfort. I paused, letting that sink in. Now I want you to think very carefully about what you're asking me to do here. His face flushed red. That's different. This is about your financial security. No, Marcus. This is about $60,000 you spent on a BMW, and however much more debt you're carrying that I don't know about yet. He stood up abruptly, the mask finally falling away completely. You know what, Mom? You're right. We are in trouble. Ashley lost her job 6 months ago. We're behind on the mortgage, behind on everything. And yes, I bought Linda that car because she promised to help us figure out a way to fix this mess. Finally, some honesty. And what exactly did she promise you? She said if we showed her how much we valued her advice, she could help us restructure our finances. She knows people, Mom, important people with money. People like her mysterious investment group? Yes, and all we need is some startup capital to get into their program. Capital that you're just letting sit here doing nothing. There it was. The full truth, laid bare in all its pathetic desperation. My son hadn't bought Linda a BMW out of generosity. He'd bought it as a down payment on a con job, using money he'd borrowed against his house, betting that he could manipulate his mother into bailing him out. I see. And if I don't provide this startup capital? Marcus's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Mom, we could lose the house. The kids' college funds are already gone. Ashley's talking about leaving me. My heart broke a little, despite everything. This was still my son, still the little boy who'd once brought me dandelions and called them flowers. But he was also a grown man who'd chosen to solve his problems by defrauding his mother instead of asking for help. Marcus, why didn't you just come to me honestly? Why all this elaborate deception with Linda and fake power of attorney documents and investment scams? He went very still. What power of attorney documents? The ones filed with the county clerk giving you legal authority over my finances. The ones with my forged signature. The color drained from his face. Mom, I don't know anything about power of attorney documents. That wasn't part of the plan. What plan? Linda said, she said you'd resist the investment opportunity at first, but if we showed you how successful and grateful we were, you'd eventually come around. She said older people needed to see proof of prosperity before they'd trust financial advice. I stared at my son, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time in years. He was a victim too, just a more willing one than I was supposed to be. Marcus, Linda Chen is not who she pretends to be. She's been running surveillance on this family for months, forging legal documents and setting up what amounts to an elaborate theft of my assets. That's impossible. She's been nothing but kind to us. Kind people don't take photographs of other people's social security cards, Marcus. Kind people don't have their sons file missing person reports when they disappear for a few hours. He sank back into his chair, looking lost and confused. For a moment I felt sorry for him. Then I remembered the $3 piggy bank, and the feeling passed. Mom, what are you saying? I'm saying you and Ashley have been played by a professional, and you were so desperate to solve your financial problems that you didn't bother to question why a wealthy widow would need you to buy her expensive gifts before she'd help you. Marcus buried his face in his hands. When he looked up again, his eyes were filled with tears. God, Mom, what have I done? What Marcus had done, as it turned out, was worse than either of us had initially realized. Over the next 2 hours, as I made coffee and forced him to walk me through every interaction he'd had with Linda Chen, the scope of their manipulation became clear. Linda hadn't just targeted our family randomly. She'd been watching us since Tom's funeral, studying our routines, learning our vulnerabilities. She'd known Marcus was struggling financially before he'd even realized it himself, and she'd positioned herself perfectly to offer solutions when the pressure became unbearable. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. She knew everything, Mom. She knew about Ashley's job situation before Ashley even got laid off. She knew about the second mortgage before we applied for it. It was like she could predict exactly what we'd need and when we'd need it. I thought about those surveillance photos in her phone, the months of preparation, the carefully staged introduction at Ashley's birthday party. Marcus, this wasn't a coincidence. Linda Chen researched our family like a doctoral thesis. She knew exactly which buttons to push and when. But why us? We're not rich people. I walked to the window, looking out at the house that had become the centerpiece of Linda's elaborate con. We're not rich, but this property is worth $450,000. Add in Tom's pension, my savings, and the insurance money, and we're talking about $750,000 in assets. Marcus went very quiet. That much? That much. I turned back to face him. Enough to make it worth months of planning and a $60,000 investment in gaining your trust. Jesus. Mom, I'm so sorry. I've screwed up everything. Sorry wasn't going to fix the forged documents or the second mortgage or the fact that his financial problems had made him vulnerable to a predator. But it was a start. Marcus, I need you to be completely honest with me now. What exactly did Linda promise you in return for buying her that car? He took a shaky breath. She said her investment group required a demonstration of good faith from potential clients. Something to show we were serious about working with them. The car was supposed to prove we could handle significant financial decisions. And after the car? She said they'd review our financial situation and help us restructure everything. Consolidate our debts, set up new investment portfolios, maybe even help us qualify for better mortgage terms. For a fee, I assume? Well, yes. But she said the returns would more than offset the costs. She showed me projections, charts, testimonials from other families they'd helped. I almost felt sorry for him. Linda had played him so skillfully, giving him exactly the hope he'd needed to hear while slowly drawing him deeper into debt and desperation. Marcus, did you ever meet any of these other families? No, but Linda said they valued their privacy. High net worth individuals don't like to publicize their financial strategies. And you never thought to independently verify any of this? His face crumpled. Mom, I was drowning. Ashley was talking about divorce lawyers. The kids were asking why we couldn't afford their school activities anymore, and I was working 70-hour weeks just to stay afloat. When Linda offered a solution, I grabbed it like a life preserver. I understood desperation, but I also understood that desperation didn't excuse what he'd been willing to do to me. So you decided to throw your mother overboard to save yourself? That's not how she presented it. She said it was a win-win situation. You'd get better returns on your investments, we'd get help with our debts, and everyone would be better off financially. Except that I'd have to sell my house and rent it back from her associates. She said you'd been talking about downsizing anyway. I never said any such thing. Marcus looked stricken. But she said you'd mentioned feeling overwhelmed by the maintenance, that the house was too big for just one person. Another lie, carefully crafted to make their theft sound like a favor. Marcus, I love this house. Your father and I built our entire life here. It's where you took your first steps, where we celebrated every holiday, where I plan to live until they carry me out. He was crying now, really crying, and despite everything, my heart ached for him. He was still my child, still the little boy who'd once thought I could fix anything that was broken. Mom, I don't know how to fix this. Even if we wanted to back out now, I don't know how. The car loan is in my name. The second mortgage payment is due next week. And Linda keeps talking about the investment group's timeline, how they need decisions soon or the opportunity will disappear. Marcus, there is no investment group. There never was. Linda Chen is running a con, and you're both the bait and the backup plan. What do you mean? I sat down across from him, choosing my words carefully. I think Linda's original plan was to manipulate me directly into signing over my assets. But when that proved more difficult than expected, she shifted to using you as leverage. Get you so deep in debt that I'd have no choice but to help, then present her solution as the only way to save the family. His face went white. You think this was all calculated from the beginning? Marcus, she had photographs of my social security card. She filed fake power of attorney documents. She's been in contact with property appraisers and God knows who else. This wasn't desperation or opportunism. This was a professional operation. We sat in silence for a long moment, both of us processing the magnitude of what Linda had orchestrated. Finally, Marcus looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. Mom, what do we do now? For the first time since this whole mess had started, I smiled genuinely at my son. Now, sweetheart, we turn the tables. Linda Chen thinks she's been playing chess with amateurs. She's about to discover that this particular amateur has been learning the game while she wasn't paying attention. What do you mean? I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone, scrolling to the voice recording app I'd started when Marcus first arrived. I've been documenting every conversation, every confession, every admission of guilt. Linda may be good at running cons, but she made one critical mistake. What's that? She underestimated the woman whose life she was trying to steal. I stood up, feeling more energized than I had in months. Now let's call Ashley and get her over here. It's time for this family to have a completely honest conversation about exactly what we're going to do to Linda Chen. Marcus looked up at me with something approaching hope. You're going to help us? I thought about the $3 piggy bank sitting on my kitchen counter, about the forged documents and the surveillance photos and the elaborate manipulation that had nearly destroyed my family. Oh, sweetheart, I'm going to do so much more than help you. I'm going to teach Linda Chen why you should never try to con a woman who's lived through 70 years of people underestimating her. Ashley arrived within the hour, looking like she'd been crying for days. When she saw Marcus's tear-stained face and the pile of investment documents scattered across my coffee table, she sank into Tom's old recliner with a defeated sigh. She knows, doesn't she? Ashley asked quietly. About all of it. I know about the forged documents, the fake investment group, and the fact that you're both in over your heads with a professional con artist, I replied, pouring her a cup of coffee. What I don't know is how much of this you were aware of versus how much Linda fed you in carefully crafted lies. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Ashley wrapped her hands around the mug like it was an anchor. I knew we couldn't afford the BMW. I knew the promotion story was a lie. But Linda was so convincing about the investment opportunity, and I was so scared about losing the house. She trailed off, staring into her coffee. Ashley, I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to figure out how we clean up this mess before Linda destroys all of us. Can it be cleaned up? Ashley looked up at me with desperate hope. Or are we completely screwed? Well, that depends on how far you're willing to go to make this right. Marcus leaned forward. Mom, we'll do anything. I mean it, whatever it takes. I walked to my desk and pulled out a folder I'd been preparing for the last 3 days. Good, because what I'm about to propose is going to require both of you to be better actors than you've ever been in your lives. I spread my plan across the coffee table, printed emails, fake financial documents, and a timeline that would make Linda Chen very sorry she'd ever heard the name Dorothy Williams. Here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow, Marcus, you're going to call Linda and tell her I've agreed to the investment proposal. You're going to say I was initially resistant. But after seeing how happy she'd made you both, I've decided to trust her judgment. Ashley frowned. But won't she be suspicious if you suddenly change your mind? Not if Marcus sells it right. Linda expects elderly people to be confused and changeable. She'll chalk it up to typical senior behavior and congratulate herself on her patience paying off. I pulled out the next set of documents. Then, Ashley, you're going to arrange a meeting with Linda and her mysterious investment group. Tell her I want to meet them face to face before signing anything, that I'm old-fashioned that way. But they don't exist, Marcus pointed out. Exactly, which means Linda is going to have to scramble to produce them, or she's going to have to admit there is no investment group and reveal her real plan. Ashley was studying the fake documents I'd prepared. Dorothy, these look incredibly official. How did you... I may be old, but I'm not technologically illiterate. Amazing what you can accomplish with a good printer and too much time on your hands. I smiled. Linda isn't the only one who can forge convincing paperwork. Marcus picked up one of the fake bank statements showing dramatically inflated account balances. Mom, what is all this supposed to accomplish? It's bait, sweetheart. Linda thinks I'm worth $750,000. These documents suggest I'm actually worth closer to $2 million. When she sees these, her greed is going to override her caution. And then what? I pulled out my phone and showed them the recording app. Then we document everything. Every conversation, every promise, every illegal proposal. By the time we're done, we'll have enough evidence to send Linda Chen to prison for elder fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to commit theft. Ashley looked skeptical. But won't she be suspicious if we're suddenly so cooperative? Ashley, Linda has been playing a long game for months. She's emotionally invested in this con succeeding. When people are that close to a big payoff, they tend to ignore warning signs that would normally make them cautious. I walked to the window, looking out at the neighborhood where I'd lived for 30 years. Besides, she's already made one critical mistake that's going to be her downfall. What's that? Marcus asked. She filed those forged power of attorney documents with the county clerk. That's a felony, and there's a paper trail leading directly back to her. Even if she tries to run now, she's already committed a crime that can be prosecuted. The room was quiet for a long moment as Marcus and Ashley processed the scope of what I was proposing. Mom, Marcus said finally, this sounds incredibly risky. What if something goes wrong? I thought about the $3 piggy bank, about Linda's condescending smile over coffee, about the months of surveillance and manipulation they'd subjected my family to. Marcus, Linda Chen made a fundamental error in judgment. She looked at me and saw a helpless elderly woman who could be easily manipulated and discarded. She never considered that I might be smart enough to figure out her game, or stubborn enough to fight back. Ashley was reading through the fake documents more carefully. Dorothy, some of these investment terms are incredibly sophisticated. How did you know what to include? I called Brian Chen's law office and told his secretary I was thinking about hiring him to review some investment proposals for potential fraud indicators. She was very helpful in explaining what red flags to look for. I smiled at their shocked expressions. Turns out Linda's son has published several articles about exactly the kind of scam she's been running on us. You called her son's office? Marcus looked horrified. I called seeking legal advice. Perfectly legitimate, and I learned that Brian Chen specializes in prosecuting exactly this type of elder fraud. When this all comes out, Linda's going to have to explain to her attorney's son why she's been running the same scams he built his career fighting against. Ashley set down her coffee cup, a new determination in her eyes. What do you need us to do? I need you both to sell this like your lives depend on it, because in a very real sense, they do. If we can't prove Linda manipulated you into participating in fraud, you could both end up facing criminal charges as her accomplices. That sobered them quickly. Marcus straightened up, suddenly looking more focused than I'd seen him in months. Mom, you really think we can pull this off? Sweetheart, I spent 40 years as a nurse dealing with emergencies, managing crises, and thinking fast under pressure. Linda Chen picked the wrong woman to mess with. I gathered up my fake documents and smiled at both of them. Now, let's go over exactly what you're going to say to Linda tomorrow, because by the time we're finished with her, she's going to wish she'd never heard the name Williams. The meeting was set for Friday afternoon at Linda's house, and she was practically vibrating with excitement when she opened the door. She'd dressed for success in an expensive silk blouse and her best jewelry, clearly expecting to close the biggest deal of her career. Dorothy, Marcus, Ashley, come in, come in. She ushered us into her living room, which had been transformed into a makeshift conference room with presentation materials spread across every surface. I'm so excited you've decided to move forward with this opportunity. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. The room was a shrine to luxury. Expensive art, designer furniture, fresh flowers that probably cost more than most people's weekly grocery budget. All of it paid for, I suspected, by previous victims who'd been unfortunate enough to trust Linda Chen with their financial futures. Linda, before we begin, I'd like to meet with your investment team, I said, settling into an uncomfortable modern chair that was all style and no substance. I'm old-fashioned about these things. I prefer to look people in the eye before I trust them with my life savings. Linda's smile flickered for just a moment. Of course, Dorothy. Unfortunately, they were called away on an emergency with another client. But I have all their credentials here, and I can answer any questions you might have. An emergency? I raised an eyebrow. What kind of emergency requires an entire investment team? Well, you know how it is with high-stakes financial matters. Sometimes situations require immediate attention. Linda shuffled through her papers nervously. But I assure you, They've reviewed your case thoroughly, and they're very excited about the potential returns. Ashley leaned forward, playing her part perfectly. Linda, Dorothy has been asking some very detailed questions about the investment structure. She wants to understand exactly how her money will be managed. Of course, that's very wise. Linda spread out a series of charts and graphs that looked impressive but were essentially meaningless. Your initial investment of $750,000 would be placed in a diversified portfolio of high-yield securities. I pretended to study the documents carefully. $750,000? But Linda, my assets are worth considerably more than that. Linda's eyes lit up like a slot machine hitting jackpot. Well, yes, but we typically recommend starting with a conservative amount for the first year, then expanding the portfolio as returns demonstrate the program's success. I pulled out my fake bank statements and spread them across her coffee table. But according to my financial review, I have liquid assets of nearly $2 million. Shouldn't I be maximizing the growth potential on all of it? Linda practically lunged for the documents, her composure cracking as greed overrode her caution. Dorothy, these numbers this is substantially more than we initially discussed. Yes, well, I had my accountant do a comprehensive asset evaluation after our coffee meeting. Turns out Tom was even more financially savvy than I'd realized. I watched Linda's pupils dilate as she calculated her potential take from a $2 million score. Marcus played his role beautifully, looking slightly overwhelmed by the numbers. Mom, I had no idea Dad had invested so much. No wonder you've been able to live so comfortably. Your father was very good with money, I said, patting Marcus's hand. He always said the secret was to never let anyone know exactly what you had until you were ready to use it. Linda was frantically taking notes, probably calculating commission percentages in her head. Dorothy, with assets of this magnitude, we definitely want to structure the investment differently. Much more aggressive growth strategies, probably some offshore components to minimize tax liability. Offshore? I widened my eyes innocently. Is that legal? Completely legal when structured properly. My associates specialize in international investment vehicles that take advantage of favorable tax treaties. Ashley shot me a look. Linda was now proposing money laundering in addition to fraud. We were gathering evidence faster than I dared hope. Linda, this all sounds wonderful, but I'm curious about something, I said, settling back in my chair. How exactly did you get into this line of work? You mentioned having experience with high-level financial strategies. For the first time since we'd arrived, Linda looked genuinely uncomfortable. Well, I've worked with several investment groups over the years. I have a talent for identifying clients who would benefit from specialized services. And your son Brian? Does he work in finance as well? The question hit like a physical blow. Linda went very still, her carefully maintained composure finally cracking completely. My son doesn't work in this field. No. Oh, that's interesting. Because when I mentioned your name to my attorney, she said she'd heard of a Brian Chen who's made quite a name for himself prosecuting financial crimes. Elder fraud. Specifically. The silence in the room was deafening. Linda stared at me with the expression of someone who just realized they'd walked into a trap. Dorothy, I'm not sure what you're implying. I'm not implying anything, Linda. I'm stating facts. Your son, Brian Chen, is an elder fraud attorney in Seattle. He specializes in prosecuting exactly the kind of scam you've been running on my family for the last 6 months. Linda shot to her feet, her mask finally falling away completely. I think this meeting is over. Oh, I think you're right about that. I stood up as well, pulling out my phone and stopping the recording app I'd been running since we'd arrived. Marcus, Ashley, I think it's time we called the police. Linda's face went white. You've been recording this. Every conversation we've had, every proposal you've made, every illegal scheme you've suggested, including your offer 5 minutes ago to help me launder money through offshore accounts. You can't prove anything. It's your word against mine. I smiled, pulling out the folder of evidence I'd been building for weeks. Actually, Linda, I can prove everything. The forged power of attorney documents filed with the county clerk, the unauthorized property appraisal, the fake investment proposals, the surveillance photos you took of my personal documents. Linda sank back into her chair, finally understanding that her carefully constructed con was collapsing around her. The question now, I continued, is whether you want to make this easy or hard. Because either way, you're going to prison. The only variable is how many additional charges you rack up between now and when the handcuffs go on. Marcus stepped forward, and for the first time in months, he looked like the strong man I'd raised. Linda, I trusted you. We all did, and you used that trust to try to destroy my family. Marcus, you don't understand. I was trying to help you. Help us? Ashley laughed bitterly. You manipulated us into going into debt to buy you a car. then tried to trick Dorothy into signing over her life savings to criminals. How exactly was that helping us? Linda looked around the room desperately, clearly searching for any angle that might salvage the situation. Dorothy, we can work this out. I can make sure you get your money back, all of it. What money? Linda? The money from your non-existent investment group? Or are you talking about returning the $60,000 Marcus borrowed against his house to buy you a BMW? Her shoulders sagged in defeat. What do you want? I walked to her window, looking out at the expensive neighborhood she'd been living in while running cons on elderly victims. I want you to call your son Brian and explain to him exactly what his mother has been doing for a living. I want you to return every penny you've stolen from Marcus and Ashley. And I want you to provide the district attorney with information about every other victim you've scammed over the years. And if I do all that, then maybe, I'll recommend that the prosecutor go easy on you when you're sentenced. Linda stared at me for a long moment, finally seeing me clearly for the first time since we'd met. You're not the helpless old woman I thought you were. I smiled, thinking about the $3 piggy bank that had started this whole mess. No, Linda, I'm really not. 6 months later, I was sitting on my front porch with a glass of lemonade and the morning newspaper when Marcus and Ashley pulled into my driveway. They'd been coming by every Sunday since Linda's sentencing, partly out of guilt, and partly, I suspected, because they'd finally realized what they'd almost lost. Linda Chen had pled guilty to elder fraud, forgery, conspiracy to commit theft, and money laundering. She was currently serving a 3-year sentence in federal prison, and her son Brian had testified at her sentencing hearing about the devastating impact her crimes had on families like ours. It had been one of the most heartbreaking things I'd ever witnessed, a son having to publicly condemn his mother's choices while still somehow trying to show love for the woman who'd raised him. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Marcus got out of the car first, followed by Ashley and the grandchildren I hadn't seen much of during Linda's manipulation campaign. 8-year-old Emma ran straight to me for a hug, while 12-year-old Jake hung back with that awkward preteen uncertainty. Hi, Grandma Dot. Emma squeezed me tight. Daddy says we're going to have a real Christmas this year, not like the weird one we had before. Emma! Ashley scolded gently, but I just laughed. She's not wrong. Last Christmas was pretty weird, wasn't it? Marcus climbed the porch steps slowly, carrying a small wrapped box. Mom, we brought you something. An early Christmas present, you could say. I accepted the box suspiciously. The last gift from Marcus hadn't exactly been a highlight of our relationship, but when I opened it, I found something that made my heart skip a beat. It was a small framed photograph of Tom and me from our wedding day, but it wasn't one I'd seen before. We looked impossibly young and happy, standing in front of the church where we'd promised to love each other for better or worse. Where did you find this? I found it in Dad's workshop when we were cleaning out some old boxes. I think he was planning to have it restored as a surprise for you before he got sick. I traced my finger along Tom's face in the photo, remembering that day when everything seemed possible and the future stretched out before us like an endless summer. Marcus, this is beautiful. Thank you. Mom, there's something else. He sat down on the porch step next to my chair. I've been going to counseling. Ashley and I both have. We're trying to figure out how we let ourselves get so lost that we almost threw away the most important relationships in our lives. Ashley nodded, settling into the other porch chair. The therapist says that financial stress can make people do things they'd never normally consider, but that's not an excuse for what we did to you. No, it's not, I agreed. But it's an explanation, and that's a start. Emma was playing in the front yard while Jake sat on the porch railing, pretending not to listen to the adult conversation, but obviously absorbing every word. Mom, Marcus continued, I need you to know that we've paid back every penny of the second mortgage. It took all of our savings and we'll be eating macaroni and cheese for the next year, but we're debt-free. And the BMW? Sold it and returned the money to the bank. Linda's restitution covered the gap between what we owed and what we got for it. I nodded approvingly. Good. How are you managing without Ashley's income? I'm working 2 jobs now, Ashley said. It's not ideal, but we're making it work. And Marcus got that promotion for real this time. Actually, Marcus added, I got promoted because I started working harder instead of looking for get-rich-quick schemes to solve our problems. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching Emma chase butterflies in the front yard. The morning was warm and peaceful, with the kind of gentle breeze that makes you grateful to be alive. Grandma, Jake said suddenly, Dad told us about the lady who tried to steal your house. He did he? Yeah. He said she was really smart and almost fooled all of you. I looked at Marcus, who shrugged sheepishly. I thought they should know the truth. Age-appropriate version, obviously. "And what did you learn from Daddy's story?" I asked Jake. The 12-year-old thought carefully before answering. "That grown-ups can make really stupid mistakes when they're scared, and that you should never try to trick Grandma Dot because she's way smarter than she looks." I burst out laughing. "Jake, that might be the wisest thing anyone said all year." Marcus grinned. He gets that from his grandmother. As the afternoon wore on, we fell into the kind of easy family rhythm that I'd missed during those dark months of Linda's manipulation. Emma showed me her latest art project. Jake told me about his baseball team, and Marcus and Ashley actually seemed to relax for the first time since I'd known them. When they were getting ready to leave, Ashley hugged me tightly. "Dorothy, I know we can't undo what happened, but I want you to know that we're going to spend the rest of our lives making sure nothing like that ever happens again." "I know you will, sweetheart." Marcus was the last to say goodbye. "Mom, there's one more thing. I know this doesn't make up for anything, but I wanted you to have this." He handed me an envelope, and inside I found a handwritten letter that started with "Dear Mom" and went on for 3 pages. It was an apology, but more than that, it was an acknowledgement of everything I'd done for him over the years and a promise to be the son I'd raised him to be. At the bottom, he'd written, "You taught me that family means putting each other first, even when it's hard. I forgot that lesson for a while, but I promise